Follow again. Ask any Trump loyalist and he will tell you the American deep state is out to undermine their president. Deep state meaning the military and the intelligence community. This conspiracy theory runs pretty deep with the current inhabitants of the White House. Here's more.
Is the American deep state out to take down their own president? Check out what Newt Gingrich, Republican and former Speaker of the House of Representatives, said less than 3 months ago. Of course the deep state exists. There's a permanent state of massive bureaucracies that do whatever they want and set up deliberate leaks to attack the president. Now read this tweet from Trump. Information is being illegally given to the failing NY Times and Washington Post by the intelligence community, just like Russia. The real scandal here is that classified information is illegally given out by intelligence like candy. Very un-American. Trump strategist Steve Bannon, who briefly served on the National Security Council, has published a slew of articles on the existence of America's deep state, comprising members from the defense and intelligence communities. He and other Trump loyalists believe the deep state is undermining the president personally, with damaging calculated leaks and sabotaging his policy agenda. Gingrich says this is what the deep state does. They create a lie, spread a lie, fail to check the lie, and then deny that they were behind the lie. But former FBI Director James Comey, who in Trump's eyes probably represents the deep state, says the president is at fault.
Although the law required no reason at all to fire an FBI director, the administration then chose to defame me and, more importantly, the FBI by saying that the organization was in disarray, that it was poorly led, that the workforce had lost confidence in its leader. Those were lies.
Intelligence officials say leaks happen all the time. They are generally done from a spirit of patriotism and to protect democracy. In Trump's case, it stems from mistrust, from his public attacks on the intelligence community, which gives an advantage to foreign powers to interfere. Bureau Report, WION.
Joining us on this, Glenn Carl, American writer and former intelligence officer from Massachusetts. Stephen Golub, international affairs expert with us from California. Good evening to both of you. Stephen, we've taken it up as promised yesterday on the show with you. And Glenn Carl, they're blaming the deep state. A few years back, that would have included you. Glenn, if you can hear my voice, the White House is blaming the situation on what they call the deep state, the military and the intelligence community. Right. And you were part of it some time back, so you can probably shed some light on it.
I can, yes. I thought that Stephen was going to weigh in, but I'm happy to. I think that the subject of this report is perhaps the most important issue facing America. It's a larger issue than the incompetence and venality and probably treason of Trump and members of his entourage, because the deep state is a concept that comes out of the far right and fascism. To call it alt-right is to somehow launder the true import and significance of what this means. And Newt Gingrich is betraying the country he claims to serve by spreading the assertion, the thought, the assumption that there is such a thing as the deep state. No. What James Comey was talking about, what everyone else is talking about, is the rule of law, the functioning of democracy, and the obligations of a bureaucracy to fulfill their oaths to the Constitution. There's no such thing as the deep state. It truly comes from fascism. So it's a very alarming, profoundly dangerous development that supposedly mainstream responsible politicians are now using this to defame people trying to uphold the law and protect the Constitution. This is a grave, grave issue for the United States.
Stephen Golub, for months I've been trying to find a guest who will defend Donald Trump. I haven't been able to, so I'll play the devil's advocate here. Corey Lewandowski said that James Comey represents the deep state and everything that is wrong with Washington and should face prosecution. Is leaking memos okay?
Under these circumstances, perfectly, and thanks for having me. And basically, I couldn't agree more with your other guest. I might shade things a bit less strongly in how I describe the situation, but basically, I think he nailed it correctly. No, leaking this memo, which was just Trump's recollection of, if you're talking about specifically what Comey did, just Comey's recollection of his conversation with Trump is not problematic at all. More broadly, these kinds of leaks have gone on for years and decades under many types of administrations. If it's classified information, it can be problematic. But even then, it's also part of what informs an open democratic society to let people know what's going on inside the government. Sometimes leaks occur for self-interested purposes on the part of government officials, but even then, basically, it's a good way of keeping information flowing, and unless it betrays classified information that undermines our national security, it's often a very good thing.
Glenn Carl, the big question, of course, in the American press now is, are there tapes? But how damaging is the stuff that is already out in public domain?
Well, the good news from a true patriot's perspective, from someone who embraces and devotes his life and was actually willing to give it, as many of my colleagues have, to the Constitution, is that Comey testified and does have contemporaneously written memoranda, notes, minutes of his conversations, and that we are now discussing this. So incrementally, this was a good step for the affirmation of the rule of law and against, frankly, the usurpation of our laws and our power by people who are, and I'll speak frankly because the American political discourse continues to avoid it, fascists. Nonetheless, the alarming fact is that our system is so designed that it is virtually impossible to remove a president, even who has been convicted of crimes, unless he is impeached and then removed by the Congress. And Congress, controlled by the Republicans, has shown virtually zero willingness to uphold their oaths, and rather they are protecting Trump because that protects their party, which allows them to advance, they think, their agenda, which fundamentally is to cut taxes for the wealthy. It's shocking what is happening to my country. I'm sorry to be vehement about this, but this is, as I've said over and over and over, the gravest crisis facing the United States since 1861. People need to realize this. This is not politics as normal. It's not a spat. The deep state does not exist, and the allegations that it does undermine American democracy.
Stephen Golub, look at Donald Trump's reaction. He's called Comey a leaker and a liar. So as things stand right now, it's Trump's word against his former FBI directors, unless they find more proof.
Well, Comey has a lot more credibility than Trump does. Trump is a demonstrated serial liar. I mean, it's in terms of the election campaign, independent fact checkers found that he lied far more egregiously and extensively than the normal misleading statements of politicians. He really broke the barrier in that regard. To put Comey's testimony in context, though, there are two very important things to remember. First of all, view this as one building block in what may well be a political and legal case that's that will accumulate over the course of months and years against Trump. Comey is a part of that, but Robert Mueller and other independent agencies operating may be accumulating more information and more data against Trump to build the case for impeachment, or at least to undermine him politically and legally. The other context to really keep in mind here, and I think Glenn got at this, but I want to expand on it a bit. This is in the context of Russia interfering with U.S. elections and the very real possibility or likelihood that it will continue to do so. So it's not just a matter of obstruction of justice on the part of the president or his associates. It's the matter of the underlying issue that triggered all this was a real threat and attack on U.S. democracy. And that's really the context in which this is operating that's so dangerous to our country, in addition to the ways that Glenn identified.
Right. The knives are out. This is a developing story. Thanks very much, Stephen Golub and Glenn Carl, for joining us and for weighing in on this. And with that, it's a wrap on the show as well. Thanks very much for joining us here on Gravitas. The news continues on Beyond.